Today on the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, episode 5-6, we explore the living life with abundance, paying it forward, with my guest, Wally Carmichael from the podcast Men of Abundance. Next on the podcast. Let's do this.
Welcome to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery and conversations about not sitting on the sideline of life. Let's get involved. Here's host Joe Foley.
Hey, welcome to the podcast. I want to say thank you for being here. Hey, my name is also Joe Foley, and I'm a dad and a parent and a busy adult like you in this world. And I really want to say thank you. Yes, you, sitting across from me. Thank you for being here. And if it's your first time, welcome. I know this dad stuff, parent stuff, it's not easy and our time's limited. So you take to spend time. It means a lot. The goal of this podcast is really to share my experience of being a dad and a parent, an adult, and because you know what, I really didn't have any guidance as a kid, so I'm trying to explore, and it's like a journey of discovery, really, and explore my journey about trying to figure this stuff out. I mean, I'm in almost my mid-40s. I still don't know everything. So my interviews and guests and topics helps me figure out how to be a better person, a better dad, and I'd like to share that with you, my journey of discovery. Well, next up, my conversation with Wally Carmichael, the host of the Men of Abundance podcast. Wally's also an author, speaker, and coach. We talk about everything from being a dad, paying it forward, living life with abundance, mindset. Those are three big topics. A few other things we talk about is how mastermind and a benefit of a coach can help with achieving your goals. The honest and transparent from Wally is inspiring, and it's a great opportunity to learn. Also, another great opportunity to learn is Wally's offering a 45-minute business breakthrough session with the business owners who would like to double, if you like to double in leads, conversion, and triple your revenue. I like that thing, triple your revenue. All he asks is you allow him to use your candid feedback results for his next book. Go check it out. The link will be in the show notes, but I'll also mention the web address. It's APM is capitalized, masterycoach.com. So with further ado, let's jump into the interview. Welcome to the podcast, Wally.
Man, it is my pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
I know from listening to your podcast and stuff like that, I know you have two sons. It's two sons, right? Correct?
It's three.
Three sons. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I heard about you had sons. What is one memorable moment you have with your sons? I know as a dad, it's always fun things to do with your sons.
The most memorable moment that we have together has always been anytime we go out camping. And when we all lived out here in Hawaii, we'll get more into my story and where they're at right now. But going camping out here at Bellows Beach out here in Hawaii, we just love hanging out, camping for the weekend or sometimes for a week, going bodyboarding during the day, and at night just, doing our regular camping stuff and just telling stories and going out in the woods and shooting slingshots at each other and other things that we probably shouldn't be doing, but we push the envelope a little bit and really challenge ourselves.
Well, what if somebody wanted to know who Wally Carmichael is? What is your story?
Oh, my story is quite extensive, man. Grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, Southwest Phoenix. And if you guys have ever listened to or ever watched a movie called Spare Parts with George Lopez, I highly recommend it otherwise if you haven't seen it already. But it's about some high school kids who take on MIT for a robotics competition. Well, they take on a competition. MIT was also part of the competition. And all they literally had was spare parts because they're from a predominantly Hispanic school in a pretty rough neighborhood in Phoenix, Arizona, and they didn't have much funding, so they literally brought together spare parts. And George was reluctantly the teacher or the director of this group of kids who were going for this competition. That's the high school I graduated from, Carl Hayden High School. As a white boy with long blonde hair, I was minority in that school, but I wouldn't change a thing. But it was a bad environment, and I knew I didn't want to stay in that environment my entire life. So I joined the military at the age of 20 after dropping out of college because I ran out of money for college. And did 25 years as an Army medic, traveled to 23 countries on 5 continents, met some amazing people and some not so amazing people. And I can say the same thing about the places I visited. But along the way, I just was blessed with so much abundance and so many connections, so many friendships, so much camaraderie. And the whole time I was chasing after this 6 and 7 figure income, always doing some sort of a side business. And then finally I had this realization one day when I'm sitting on the beach in front of my house out here in Hawaii, and realized my wife always asking me, what the heck are you chasing? Because I was always working, always trying to do some sort of hustle, doing something, some way to make that extra money, and quite frankly, get to that 6 and 7 figure income. And I realized I'm at the 6-figure income level, and I've got amazing boys, 3 amazing boys. I've got an amazing wife. I live an amazing life. I live in an amazing place where people vacation, and many don't get a chance to. And then I just made the realization that I am, in fact, living a life of abundance. And that's where the whole Men of Abundance project came from, was from the idea of writing a book, creating an audience to have an opportunity to talk to other people living a life of abundance, mostly men, but I also talk to women, and to collect stories for a book, Living Your Life of Abundance. And that's one of my big projects that I'm working on right now.
It's interesting, as I was looking over your website and stuff, and something stood out to me, and there was a quote on there is, your past does not define your future. What does that mean to you?
Oh, just that. I mean, my past is pretty grim. I mean, I've some of my buddies that I went to school with and I grew up with, or not even went to school with, just kids I hang around with in the neighborhood. Some of them are in orange jumpsuits in prison right now. Some of them are not alive anymore. However, some of them are doing great things with their lives as well. But, if you look at some of the people that I talk to on my podcast on Men of Abundance, for instance, Christian Picciolini, who is a former skinhead and Aryan and a white supremacist. He was recruited by the guy who started the movement in the United States. And now he's got a program called Life After Hate. And what he does is he helps people get out of the movement. But if you look at somebody like that and you say, this is his background, or this guy was in prison, like in the United States, it's a terrible thing when people get out of prison, they serve their time and they can't find jobs. They're still being judged on their past. And their past is not who they are today. That's part of who they are, because they became the person that they are today. But that's not who you are. And you have to take that personally as well. If you grew up a certain way and you grew up poor, you grew up wealthy, or you grew up whatever, that's not who you were back then is not who you are today, hopefully, because hopefully you're growing a little bit. But too many people get stuck in the idea that this is who I am, this is who my family is, this is who I'm always going to be. It's funny you bring that up, because at the time that we're having this conversation, just on my Pay It Forward Aloha Friday, I just posted an episode called I Am What I Am and That's All What I Am, like Popeye used to say. And I thought, what a limiting belief to have of yourself in such a way. And you are not that. You don't have to always be that. If you want to enhance your life and you want to enhance your mindset, you can do it. You just got to get out of the past.
The people you talk to, some about that is that some people get into ruts, like guys can get into ruts, or just be complacent because, the grind of everyday life, and they just forget about trying to improve themselves and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. I literally just had this conversation this morning with another guest that I have coming on in a couple months. And it was exactly that conversation that he is so forward thinking and he's always trying to reinvent himself. And I'm the same way, but I still find myself getting pulled back into the normalcy of everyday life, working at the job and just get, kind of going to work, coming home, watching the game type of thing, which I don't really get into. But you still, even though we all want to move forward, or many of us, and I'm assuming many of the folks that your listeners want to move forward and become better dads and become better husbands, better parents, better at whatever it is that they do, they still find themselves coming back in that rut. That's why it's so important to continue listening to shows like yours, to continue to move forward and to get into some sort of a mastermind and get around other forward thinkers and people that are moving forward, so that they can recognize that and say, hey, come on back, dude. Let's keep moving forward. You don't want to go backwards.
What is like masterminds? How does that benefit you? I was just curious. What would be the benefit of a mastermind?
Oh my goodness, I can't. If you're not in a mastermind, you're really missing out. if you're in a good mastermind, a group of men or women or whoever it is that you're associating with, find a mastermind that you can resonate with. But if you're in a really good one, it's people that get to know you. You get to know them. You add value to the group, and they add value to your life as well. And good men, strong men, will call you out on your BS. They're going to call you out and say, hey, look, you don't even realize that your son is doing this, this, and this because you're blinded by it. I want to point out some things. Your son is amazing and doing this, this, and this, or your son is really screwing up at this point, or you are screwing up. Something like, you're talking about, I'm hiring the secretary for a new position, and you talking about why you're hiring that particular individual. That's not the right reason to be doing that thing. I'm just going through many different scenarios, but just many things in life, from your health, your relationships, your finances, all of this stuff. They're all at different places in their life. And a great mastermind really helps each other out. I'm in 3 masterminds right now.
Wow. Wow. It was one thing I'd be interested in, also calling out your BS in the mastermind, but what if they call it the person's positive things that sometimes people don't like? Us men, or women, doesn't matter which one you are, but sometimes we just don't see it.
Yeah, very good point. Absolutely. And that's the benefit of a coach. And we kind of talked about that pre-show. The benefit of a coach and being in these masterminds is the same thing, is that others see in you what you don't see in yourself. Sometimes we have this thing referred to as a curse of knowledge. I know things that I just take for granted, and I just don't realize that other people don't know some of the stuff that I know. And it goes both ways. So when somebody comes up and says, hey, you know what? I greatly appreciate you saying that. I dig what you're doing. You have this skill that I don't even think you realize that you have this skill at influencing people, type of thing. It's like, wow, really? I hadn't really paid much attention to that. What do you think I should, what do you think I should do with that? How can I hone that skill, type of thing? And then they'll have connections. That's the other thing. It's just the connections of connecting people to others.
Well, you think of it. Me and you both have this. You have a podcast. I have a podcast, and the medium of this is around. It reaches around the world. You don't realize how much influence we have. Because sometimes, for myself, I'm sitting there with a computer, with a microphone, and I live in New Hampshire, and I don't realize I don't know if you realize it, but we don't realize the reach we have.
Well, that's a very good point. And I do actually realize that, in that every once in a while, about a couple times a month, I'll go in and see how many downloads I'm getting in various parts of the world, various parts of the United States. And on my software, I have the stats where I can see where people are listening, where the downloads are coming from. And right now, last I checked anyway, it was a couple of weeks, but Men of Abundance is being downloaded in 63 countries. There's people downloading my podcast in China, in countries in Sri Lanka, in Dubai. It's crazy. It blows my mind to think that there's actually people in Pakistan listening to these conversations that I'm having with these men and women, and getting feedback from it. I must get 20 new Facebook messages a day just on people. Sometimes it's the Prince in Saudi trying to give me, he's got some money for me if I just give him my bank account information. But but some of them, quite frankly, are men reaching out looking for connections. They're reaching out they're not looking for a handout. They're looking for a conversation. Some of them want to learn to speak English better, so they want to have that conversation. Some of them want to learn. One guy, this in a small little town in Africa, wants to start a coffee shop. So I connected him with some folks that I know that do some angel investing in that area, and I may be able to help him out. I can't help everybody out, but I can make a connection with somebody who possibly can.
I was wondering, since you have your 3 sons, have any of your 3 sons had interest of podcasting like stuff?
Probably my youngest, my 8-year-old. He's always coming over when I'm on the mic, and he wants to come over and say something in the mic, and he likes to do his own YouTube videos and stuff. So I'm getting him into that as well.
It's always fun as a dad. I know my 4-year-old son grabs my mic too, and he starts doing his own little podcast too, and it's funny. Always a good time. Well, it's one thing I was interested in, actually 2 things. First, I'm going to start off with gratitude. Something you always talk about in your podcast, and I've heard it before. What does that mean to you?
Well, I start every single morning with gratitude. First thing I do when I open my eyes is somebody's name just pops into my head. Tomorrow morning, it might be you. And I'll just in my mind say, you know what? I really thank Joe. He's doing amazing things. He's getting his message out there, lifting up other people, trying to make people better dads, and it'll just be a real quick thought. And just to show how I can evolve as well and that I'm not stuck in my own ways, the conversation that I had this morning with a gentleman who has been writing a thank you letter every single day for the last 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And he writes that letter and he gives it to somebody. And he'll write the letter for a teacher that he had or somebody that served him at the restaurant or the manager of the restaurant or just anybody in general. Every single day he writes a letter. And I like that because it's putting a little bit more action to the gratitude. What I do is I also, when I wake up and I get, one of the first things I do as I get up is I read out of a book. I'm reading right now, God's Wisdom for Navigating Life. I read a page every day. Then I write in my journal. And the first thing I do in my journal is I write down what I'm grateful for. And it's just transforming. It's truly transforming. It starts the day out right. And it just makes me feel better throughout the day. When I don't do that, I can definitely feel the difference.
Is it, as your dad yourself, you know how sometimes things can be hard. You ever had those moments you're like, oh man, I can't believe I did that kind of dad stuff? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just anything from disciplining to not sticking up for him at school or something like that. Yeah, absolutely. It's a learning process.
Yeah, it can be challenging actually. If you yell at your kids, like, oh man, I know I was wrong, but sometimes your emotion gets the better of yourself and you have to go and apologize. Another thing too is I was really interested in is, like I said, gratitude was the first one. And you always start a kick in the gut moment. How that evolved and what is yours?
Well, a kick in the gut moment is just an event that happens to all of us. And sometimes it happens to all of us multiple times throughout our lives. And they will never stop. It's just part of life. Ultimately, it's what you do with that kick in the gut moment that determines what your next steps are, where you're going to be at, 3 to 5 years. And some people, quite frankly, define themselves by that kick in the gut moment and turn their mess into their message. As far as what my kick in the gut moment is, my biggest kick in the gut moment is when I betrayed my wife and then had to have that conversation with her. Well, I don't want to get into too much of it, but just understand I was young, traveling a lot, and I was tempted, and temptation got the best of me.
Another thing too is your podcast. We talked a little bit before about the Man of Abundance, and I think you're up to 100, over 100 episodes, 160,
170 at this point.
170. How long ago have you been doing this?
Been about a year and a half.
How did Man of Abundance? How did you come up with that title though?
So the title came up because originally when I first started thinking about me living my life of abundance, at that same time that I made that realization, so much more started coming into my life and so many more connections and amazing relationships. And so one of the guys I got introduced to, Patrick Snow, he is an author and he helps people write a book and or become public speakers and stuff like this. And I was invited to this event where he was speaking. And afterwards, I had a conversation with him, and I ended up hiring him as a coach to help me write my book. Well, as I started, and I came up with the title of the book with him and some other guys, Living Your Life of Abundance. And I was going to take a different twist on it from anything else that you've seen out there. But then as I started writing the book, I realized I have many examples of how we have abundance in our life, but they all seem to be my examples. So I decided to build this. Build it and they will come. I decided to create an audience so that I could have a conversation with other people, other men. And I decided I wanted to work with men. I wanted to have this conversation with men. I wanted to talk to men. So through masterminds and through coaching, I came up with the name Man of Abundance.
So you do coaching and mentoring. Is that something you do?
Yeah. So that's something that came about as along this journey of podcasting. As my story started getting out there, my voice started getting out there, people started finding me on they Google my name. I take up the first 3 pages of Google, and people started contacting me and asking me if I would coach them in living a life of abundance or mentor them or assist them in any way. Even one spouse called me, or she sent me a message, and she said, I want you to coach my husband in living a life of abundance. And I was like, wow, I truly, truly am humbled, and I appreciate that. But one, he's got to want it himself. So have him listen to the show and see if he resonates with me, because he's got to resonate with me. And 2, these people were asking me to do this, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to set up a program. I didn't know if it was going to be a one size fits all, which I pretty much knew that wasn't the case. So what I ended up doing was hiring a coach to teach me how to set up a coaching business and have these conversations with men. And that's what I'm doing now.
Interesting. How's that experience been for you, though?
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I've already had two guys in a small group that I ran through kind of a pilot version of some of the conversations we'd have and how I could interact with them. And they just absolutely loved it. It blew them away. So it blew me away. It blew them away, quite frankly. Because like I said, the curse of knowledge, sometimes we don't realize what we have to offer the world. And these guys really opened my eyes to what I did for them. And therefore I'm going to do for many other men here over the next several years.
Well, it's interesting, since we're having this conversation about mentoring and coaching, what if, some guys, like, they have a great idea, or they just, they really want to do something and just don't take the next step because they're out of fear? What would you say to them?
Well, my first question, I always ask questions, and my first question would be, what is the fear? Mm-hmm. So some of the answers I get back on that, because I've had these conversations, is, well, some of the common fears is, well, I'm going to fail. Okay, you are. There's going to be failures along the way. You're going to learn as you go. And part of the learning process is to have those kick in the gut moments and fail. Now, you can shorten that learning curve by hiring somebody who's doing what you want to do and teaches how to do what you want to do. You can get into mastermind groups and stuff like this. Another common one is, well, what if I start this and I start sharing my ideas and stuff with certain people or on social media, because you got to get some advertising out there eventually, right? And then people that I grew up with start thinking, what the hell is this guy doing? Why is, he can't do that. Yeah, I assure them that's going to happen. Those people are going to talk even behind your back if they don't say it to your face, or they don't post it, share it on your post or whatever. Just understand that they're where they are and you're where you are, but you know where you want to be. So you got to think about the people that you can help. And then lastly, I'll if they ask for my suggestion, because I don't give unsolicited advice, if they ask, I'll say, look, there's people out there looking for what you have to offer, whether it's a product or service or whatever it is, and you are doing a huge disservice by not allowing them to have that. Build what you want to build and just start taking small little baby steps. And it's those little baby steps that are going to give you the confidence. It's not the other way around. You don't get confidence and you don't get motivation by sitting on your couch thinking about doing something. It's when you take action and you realize it's not as bad as you thought it would be that you start growing. Think about this. You're standing on every little kid, many little kids, maybe a few haven't, but they got out, they had the nerve to climb up on the high dive at the pool. And they get up there and they think, I can do that until they get up on that high dive. And then they're like, oh my goodness, this is a long ways up. You have two choices. You can either jump off or you can go back down the ladder. But here's the thing. Those that jumped off, they realized they didn't die. They realized it wasn't as bad as they thought it would be. They actually realized it was kind of fun and exhilarating. Then you can't stop them from going over and over and over again on that high dive. It's the same thing. It's just like that.
It's a common thing. I'm like, a lot of people like get stuck in that one place. Like they're afraid of failure. I mean, I can admit to that. I started this podcast 2 years ago, and I did one episode. It took me another whole 2 years to do the number 2. I got stuck in that fear, and I can understand. It's one of the reasons why I asked that question, and I can relate to that question actually too a little bit.
The cure for fear is action.
Definitely. It's stepping out, taking action, and then I realized, what the hell was I scared about? The next thing I was wondering, I know you have a community. Is that a Facebook community also?
Yeah, I have a Facebook community, the Men of Abundance community. It's a closed group just for men.
How was that interaction there?
Well, quite frankly, right now, the interaction isn't where I would like for it to be. But again, it's one of those things that's a work in progress. Same thing my coach said. You're going to start this. You're going to put live videos in there every day. You're going to, put so many conversations in there, post certain things, and eventually people will open up. And that's where we're at right now.
Oh, may I ask how many men are in there? I was curious. It's
just over 300, actually. It's working on, I think, 320, something like that.
That's a pretty good group, actually.
Mm-hmm.
There's other groups that I wouldn't say names, but they're over 7,000 podcast groups. But and I know
I know a couple that are into 30,000, 40,000. Yeah.
But starting off, that means even 320 is not a bad group either.
Yeah. And for me, quite frankly, the size of the group doesn't make as much of a difference to me. The guys that are interacting are the ones that I want to interact with. And everybody else, quite frankly, I've had a lot of experiences with various groups, and some guys get caught up on the whole, well, there's 3,000 people in here, but only, 100 are communicating. And like for my group, there's only 300 and maybe 15 of us are in there posting stuff and having conversations and stuff like that. Others are watching. They're getting something out of it. Some people don't like to communicate on social media. They just like to be spectators. It's not to say they're not getting something from it, because I'm sure they are. In fact, I know they are.
It's like, yeah, I definitely, to some groups, I'm just a lurker. I'm looking around, taking in information and not responding, but I am there, though. I'm in those groups.
Right.
Final thoughts. I need to wrap up. Final thoughts with where they can find you. Any final thoughts of being a dad and like that?
Well, as far as where they can find me, menofabundance.com. Everything's there. All my social media links are up there on the left-hand page. Also, you can go to the members only, which is where guys can get connected and get into the Men of Abundance Facebook community on Facebook. As far as being a dad, look, never be the dad that acts like you know everything, especially to your kids. Let them know, look, I don't know everything. We're going to figure this out together. Your kids are going to come to you with multiple problems. And the worst thing you can do is act like you know what the answer is. Sometimes it's great to say, even if you do think you know what the answer is, sometimes it's great to sit down with them and say, you know what? I don't know. Let's figure this out together. Let's go talk to, Dad, what's it like to be a fireman? I don't know. Never been a fireman. Let's go talk to a couple. Let's go down to the local fire station, have a conversation with some firemen and some paramedics and some police officers, or let's go talk to a couple podcasters and, see how they got started and what they're talking about and how they set their stuff up. Make it a whole learning experience. I think that's the best thing you can do personally with your kids, is to learn with them. Exactly.
Well, Wally, thank you very much for being on the podcast today. All the links will be in the show notes. And I want to really thank you for being a guest today.
Man, it's my pleasure. It really is. And guys, if you're listening to this show right now for the very first time, no sitting on the sideline dad, and you haven't subscribed yet, get subscribed, because that way you're going to get this information. It's going to come right in. You're not going to forget about it. It's going to be right there in your face, and you're going to get a chance to listen to these conversations and learn a little bit from each and every one of them. And I just thank you for what you're doing. It's amazing stuff, Joe.
Thank you, Wally. Well, that's all I have for this episode. I want to thank you for being here. I also want to thank Wally Carmichael for being a guest on the podcast. You can find more about him and his podcast and all the stuff he offers at menofabundance.com. You can find all links in the show notes for this episode over at nosittingonthesideline.com/56. Please comment on the podcast. All comments help improve the podcast, and just want to say hello, continue the conversation, bring a new topic up, maybe something you're interested in. And if you have a second, I would really appreciate it if you have a second. Check out this new cool TeePublic store for the podcast. Me and my son picked a few shirts, put in the store, and hopefully something that you might find interesting and buy and purchase and help support the show, because keeping costs for hosting costs and stuff like that. Something trying out and see how it works out, and we find something interesting. Christmas is right around the corner. Also, you can find all my contact information at nosittingonthesideline.com/contact. Well, until next time, take care. God bless. Give your kids a hug. Tell them how much you love them. Take a minute. Just breathe. Life's short, time's short. Well, until next time, take care. God bless. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates of the show and helpful and useful tips. This has been a production of Foley 42 Media.